Okay, I got it. All right. Hello, everyone. I'm so glad to be here with you all today. As you all know, I'm Toni. I'm Dr. Toni here, kind of creator of this community, really where we come together and we get to share stories, uplift one another, and also heal through our own experiences as we share those with others. And I am so excited to have Miss Bonnie here with us. She's an amazing human being. We actually know each other because we have gone to church together at the same church for quite some time, although I haven't been there recently. But I will say that Bonnie is just amazing. She's always giving her time. She is so loving. She is so caring. You're currently in charge of special education at your school district. Is that right?
Oh my gosh, I think I'm nervous. I'm an administrator at an elementary school. So I did teach special ed for 20 years prior to that. Yeah.
So she's amazing. She's amazing. But she has also been through some stuff, which, I think a lot of what happens on social media, at least I see it all the time with clients, people I work with, people I speak to, and even non-clients, just like friends and family. It's so easy to compare ourselves on social media. We see what people want us to see. And then we think that that's like the whole picture, the real picture. Everything looks picture perfect. And honestly, that's just not how life works. It's not how anyone's life works. Everyone has ups and downs. And so Miss Bonnie is always looking put together. But she has her own story, right? She's had her own challenges. And so she's been so open and courageous and sharing those with us today. But first, do you mind just sharing with us a little bit about yourself, who you are now, what you do now, what you're into, what you're excited about, things like that, a little bit of kind of who you are at this point in your life?
Well, I keep really busy as an administrator at an elementary school, and the principal and I, we basically run the school, and so it's a lot of fun, but it's a lot of work. I have a lot of take-home work. So, but I am involved in the church, like you said. I have two daughters who are, one's in college and one's out, and they're fabulous, great kids. Even though we struggled with my older daughter through her teenage years. I'm married almost 16 years to a wonderful man who I met through the school district that we both work in. So I'm in a great place. I have my summers off, or most of the summer off, so that we can really connect and enjoy each other. And it's awesome to have a partner that you can spend a lot of time with and not get sick of each other and not fight and not, I didn't have that in my first marriage, but definitely in my current and final marriage, it's awesome. And I've wanted that for a long time. So I think not that I was looking for another husband, but it kind of just happened, and we were friends for a long time first. And I think that's what really sparked anything, because I certainly didn't think I was ever going to get married again. Mm-hmm. Not after the junk I went through with the first one. So it is very refreshing to know that there was a road that I had to go through, and a lot of trouble to go through to get to this point, but it was definitely worth it, and what I learned along the way.
Yeah. So, wow. So to like where to start, right? Well, I think as I share with you, like before we hopped on this call together, is this is unfortunately something I see and hear a lot of, are individuals that are really struggling in either their relationship or their marriage, and sometimes it is really toxic. Other times it's a matter of like we need to work on things differently, go out about things differently together. But other times it is really toxic, and making the decision about what to do about that is not an easy one. And so, if you wouldn't mind kind of walking us through what some of the challenges that you were facing during that time of your life and in your marriage, your first marriage, and how you even knew, how did you even know it was toxic? Like, how was that something that you figured out on your own, or were you accepting a lot of unhealthy behavior for a long time? Or like, what did that look like for you initially?
Well, I was 26 when I first got married. We met in college. We had been going out for, 5-6 years. So it's funny though, because he had a side to him that I saw briefly when we were dating, with his anger towards his brother for messing up he would play a game in the backyard, and his brother dug up whatever he had, and he kind of freaked freaked out and showed me a little side there, but I was very trying to understand and want to be there for him. I didn't want to, but there were little signs along the way that I just didn't see or didn't want to see. And we were married for about 10 years, all in all, till we separated. It just started out with a lot of arguing, and I grew up, my parents would fight here and there, but they're still married. They're married over 50 years. My grandparents were married for 78 years. My other set. So divorce really wasn't something in my mind. So as we were arguing, I just figured we would work things out. It's when it got to the point where it got physical and he was physically abusive, and he would drink, but what I found out, he was more of a dry drunk, because when he was abusive to me, he wasn't necessarily drinking, but he exhibited the characteristics of someone who did. I didn't even know what that was. I ended up calling the some women's center, and just for someone to talk to, because I wasn't sure how to handle this. There's just so much I wanted to tell my mom, because if you stay in the marriage, I know my mother, she would be like, never see him in the same eyes again. So I really wanted to be sure and understand what I was going through. And none of my friends were going through this, at least if they didn't share. And so I really didn't know who to turn to. Like I said, I called the Women's Center. I explained what was going on. And at this point, when the abuse started, the first time, I was pregnant with my older daughter. He pushed me into the kitchen cabinet. He threw a garbage can at me. I locked myself in the bathroom. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm having our child, and this is not how I want to raise my child. So it was like walking on eggshells. I had to watch what I said, watch what I did. And sometimes he was just really explosive for no reason in my mind. I almost felt like he was bipolar, because I worked in special ed for lots of years, and I had kids that were bipolar, and it just reminded me of all of a sudden he would switch gears and be this person who I didn't know. And I know not all bipolar looks like that. I get that. But there was some mental illness in his family with his father that I was aware of, and it was scary. But we worked at having a child for like 6-7 months, and we had argued a lot before. Things had gotten better, so I thought, all right, then here's a good chance. But the abuse continued, and I saw him abuse our dog, throw him, and I was like appalled that was happening, and that I really, if I got involved, I knew I would be hit. So I knew in my mind, all right, this was it. I can't stay and I had to make a plan. I was on maternity leave for my first child, so I really had to get my ducks in order. And then, as time went on, we really weren't active sexually, and it was one time in 6-month period that we were, and I got pregnant with my second daughter. So God had a plan, because I don't think he wanted either girl to be by themselves or myself. That's how I viewed it. Like, it happened for a reason. And I'm so glad, because my younger daughter is amazing. So I remember crying in my bathroom saying, oh my gosh, not only am I going to be a single mom of one daughter, I'm going to be a single mother of 2 kids, because they're only 17 months apart. So, it was great at the time. They were so close, but it was scary. So there was a lot of disrespect. You're just a teacher, you just send him out to recess. It's not a big deal. He owned his own business. So he just had a lot of uncontrolled anger. And I knew I didn't want my kids to be seeing this, and to know that, thinking that this was something normal, that was okay to have in a relationship. I certainly didn't see any physical abuse growing up from my parents, but my dad did have an anger side that he would hit before he spoke. And I knew I wasn't going to raise my kids that way. And I was very fearful. So and then I found out that he was having a relationship with our 17-year-old babysitter. So that was kind of the last straw. And my older daughter, who was like 2.5 or 3 at the time, she's the one who told me that she saw Daddy kissing the babysitter. So I was like, okay, you know what? As much as, marriage was important and you had to work out your issues, there was just too much there for me to ignore. So I had to get back from my second maternity leave and find a place to live and let him know, even though, he was resistant at the beginning. I said, this isn't working. You have to understand that this isn't working, that this is not healthy, and it's a very toxic relationship. And he wasn't having it at first, but you know what? I had to call the cops on him so many times for the one time I was nursing my younger daughter, and he was strangling me. He had his hands around my throat, choking me. I'm like, I had to throw this all up to him to make sure he saw what was really happening. I said, there's no way I can live like this. I refuse. And I did put up with it for a while, because I thought maybe I could change him. I thought, maybe, something it would dawn on him, like, oh my gosh, I don't want to raise my kids like this, but it really wasn't.
So all in all, it sounds like there was many years that passed where you had in the back of your mind this decision that this wasn't working, but there was, it sounds like maybe still like hope or something that things would change.
Yeah. And then when I got pregnant, I was like, oh, I don't want to be a single mom. And I was like, you know what? I'd rather live in a box by myself, healthy and my kids safe, than to live with this unpredictable man that I thought I knew from college, but really did not. So it was it was very tough. I ended up telling my mom what was happening, and she was very supportive and helped me move. In fact, he wouldn't let me get some of my stuff out of our house when I had bought my new house. So, I had to break in through the kitchen window and just regain the stuff that was, rightfully mine. So, and I don't ever want my girls to go through this. So they don't know a lot of the details. And I don't know, one day if it's relevant to their life and I feel like I should share it, I will, but I want them to have a relationship with their dad. And, my younger daughter does, my older daughter does not. She has a lot of issues with, things he had said to her when she was growing up, and she just can't let it go. And I do understand, but for me, my main focus was to keep my girls safe, to get them in a place where we could have a happy home. I needed to find some peace myself throughout all this. My faith really helped me through a lot of it. And I would just pray, and I know things are going to get better. Just give me strength to get to that point. And it really came down to forgiveness. I really had to let go and forgive him for all the stuff that he said and did, because if not, that weight was too heavy for me to carry around, along with everything else that I was trying to raise my girls. Like, I felt really bad I didn't take the dog with me, but I knew that would put me over the edge. And he was like, you can't have the kids and the dog. Well, for me, it wasn't an issue. I had to take my girls, and he was able to see them, but we had pick up and drop off at the daycare. That way it wasn't coming to my house. I didn't really want him there. So it took many years to really let go of the anger that I had towards him. And when I did, it was such a release. It's like, wow, I feel like I could breathe again. I feel like he didn't have control or power over me. I wanted to have a decent relationship with him. And now, 20 whatever years later, almost 20 years later, we will text back and forth or email about my daughter's college, but that's the only communication that we really have.
Yeah.
It's funny. It's very weird. Like on my birthday and Mother's Day, he'll text me, happy Mother's Day, happy birthday. So somewhere in there is a decent person. I don't think I would have ever aligned myself with somebody who wasn't, but we definitely did not bring out the best in each other. And there was a side to him, like I said, I did not know was there. And as much as I believed in marriage, I couldn't do it anymore, not with my kids.
And while all of this was happening behind the scenes in your life, would you say that people could tell what all was happening for you outwardly, like when you were at work or when you were out with your friends or when you were doing anything else outside of the home?
I had a couple close friends that I would confide in, that I would talk to about it. But no, at work, it was almost like it was a relief to go to work, so I didn't have to deal with it. Nobody really knew. My ex-husband and I did try to go to therapy. I did try that. And the woman that we saw, one of our last times, she said to me, she pulled me aside, she goes, get out of this marriage now. It's not safe. just from the, I was like, oh boy, if he can see it only after a few sessions, but his anger came out in the therapy sessions. And I think she saw that as like, whoa, that's a red flag. So, you know, I didn't want to walk away from my marriage without trying. And I really thought that I did everything that I physically, mentally, and emotionally could do. And
Mm-hmm.
after that, I didn't feel any guilt. I was like, you know what? I deserve better. My kids deserve better. And then lo and behold, like I said, I knew my husband before just as friends through our school district, but wow, how a life can turn around. And it's incredible. Like I said, was not looking for a husband, I was determined to do this on my own and just be happy with my kids. But wow. So for those of you who don't think there's a second chance out there, there definitely is. We don't fight at all. We don't always agree, but we have enough respect for each other that we talk it out or, get past it or whatever, but we've never had a fight in almost 16 years. We just,
Wow.
and we went out, 2 or 3 years before that. So it's been a long haul, and it's been awesome. And, I couldn't be happier in my present marriage. So for those of you who don't think it's possible, it is, and it might just come when you least expect it. At least it did for me.
What about those who are in it now? Like they're in maybe an unhealthy or very toxic marriage or relationship right now, and there's children involved. And there's that question of, is it really better? Like, if I leave, am I being selfish? Am I giving up because we're supposed to stay married, or because my kids should be in a two-parent home, or because those are very common questions and very common fears
Absolutely.
about why people stay, is like, but it's going to be, I need to stay for the kids. And I know, so my parents also got divorced when I was a kid. And they got divorced to each other, and they got married again, and then divorced to each other again. And I remember as a kid, I was happy that they got divorced, because it was very clear, even as a kid, that they were not happy together. It was very clear to me as a child. And so for me, what I always tell clients is, it's not about having a two-parent household. It's about modeling healthy relationships. That's the best and healthiest thing for your children. But I'm curious for you, Bonnie, because you were there for years
Mm.
enduring this abuse, and you had some of these questions in your head. So what would your message be about that?
I mean, I think for myself, I was willing to put up with it more, but when it involved the kids and when I saw him be abusive towards our dog, I was like, that's it. That was my breaking point, where I was not willing to risk their safety. In fact, our childcare arrangement, I made sure I saw them every other day. We didn't do like a whole weekend, because I wanted to make sure I didn't know his anger issues, and if they did something that, would make him angry. But going through it, I think it's important to make sure you have someone rational to bounce your conversations off of and bounce your ideas off of. And, my mother was one that said, as much as, marriage is a great thing, I don't know that this is a good thing for you. And, it's just a matter of how much a person can take and how unsafe it is for yourself. And if there's kids involved, for your kids, if it's unsafe, I mean, maybe I watch too many Lifetime movies, but there's too many movies where based on true story, that they should have gotten out earlier than they did. And what happened is, unfortunately, somebody got really hurt or even died because of it. So I just think that your kid's safety and your own safety isn't worth it. And like I said, I'd rather move back in with my parents. And my parents lived an hour away, so for my job, I couldn't do that. And I did have money saved. We had separate accounts. So that was important to me, because I was going back to school to get my master's, and I needed to make sure the money was there. And he liked to buy baseball cards and things like that. So we had our separate accounts, and we had a joint account. But I had enough in my own account over the years of working to have money to get out and go on my own. So I think that's important, is that financial security, just enough. Or if not, move in with a relative or move in with a neighbor, somebody, just to get away from that. To reach out for help, for support, because it's scary when you're by yourself and you don't know what to do, and your kids are little. And yes, I had that guilt at first, going, but I quickly saw that it was not going to be in my children's best interest to stay in an unhealthy and unsafe relationship with my ex-husband. It just wasn't good.
And then there's the question of, but what if I'm not physically being abused? What if
Mhm.
I am emotionally being abused? And so now I'm questioning, right? Is like, okay, maybe that seems so clear because he put his hands on her, and but there's this question maybe for some folks that's like, well, they're not putting their hands on me, but they are maybe like emotionally talking me down, or maybe don't let me make decisions, or tell me I'm bad or wrong, or like the emotional part. And so it's
Mhm.
like, well, is that really unsafe? Because that, when you're in the thick of it, that can be a question like, well, is it really unsafe? Is this like I should just deal with this for the sake of maybe the kids, or for staying married, or whatever those kind of
Mhm.
reasons are for someone to stay, whether it's more you're staying out of hope or you're staying out of fear,
Right. And
right?
sometimes the mental stuff is worse than the physical stuff. I mean, I know at this point I can take a punch and I'll rebound. And yes, there's anger involved in that, but if it's the constant, mentally tearing you down, I mean that does a lot to your psyche. I mean, there was a lot of that as well in my marriage, but it was, again, I took it for years, and as soon as my the kids came into the picture, I was like, you know what, I won't do that to them, and I should have gotten out earlier for my own sake, but I did not. Um, but then again, I had two great girls out of it, so there was a
Yeah.
reason that I stayed. There's a but I think that mental stuff can really wear a person down.
Yeah.
I don't. Everybody has their breaking point, and if somebody's willing to put up with that, that's just going to make it harder to heal later on. I think is the more that you put up with that. I am a believer in therapy, absolutely, and I tried it with my ex. My older daughter has been in and out of therapy for years, trying to deal with her own issues. And I always said to students that I had in my classroom, because a lot of them had therapy. Like I said, I taught emotional support for years, and they're like, "Oh, I don't want to go to therapy." And I said, you know what? Having somebody you can talk to is awesome. And sometimes it's really great to have somebody that's not your mom or dad to
Mm-hmm.
talk to, and they can really listen, and it's all about you and how you feel. And so, when they heard me say that, they're like, oh, so it's not, I said, it's not a bad thing at all. It's a great thing. And I always tell them, I said, I was in therapy. I would go again in a heartbeat. And I encourage my daughter to,
Yeah.
have that person to talk to. That's crucial. But yeah, it's, I wish there was a textbook answer to give about when to get out. And I think it just depends on each person's situation. But
Mm-hmm.
no one deserves to be treated like that. Life is too short to be that unhappy.
Yeah.
And that's what it came down to me, and in working through that.
Yeah.
But got to have that support system. And I
Absolutely.
really feel bad when people don't. And that's part of me wants to do that when I retire in a few years, is to work with families who that might not have that support and need a support system. So
Absolutely. That support system is so important. And I think like the a big message here for everyone is to know that you are worthy of more. And that more doesn't always necessarily mean that you have to leave the relationship. Depending on what's going on, it might be something that perhaps therapy or a relationship coach or an individual coach or something is helpful for you to recognize whatever your role is it, and how to put boundaries down in a different
mhm,
way for that person as well, and maybe that helps move you forward. I know there's definitely multiple times in my marriage when I've had some similar struggles, not the physical
mhm,
aspect but otherwise, and I've had to question that very, very seriously. And you are so right, there is not a textbook answer as to like either when the time is to get out, or even if you
yes,
should
right.
get out or should stay. And so that's what makes this process so unique. But to hear, Bonnie, that you experienced you experienced all of this over a period of several years, and no one at work even knew, I think in
Mhm,
and of itself is really important for all of us to hear. Is like, we don't know everyone's stories, we don't know
mhm,
what people are going through, and people don't know all that we're going through.
mhm,
And so
right.
for us to have some compassion for ourselves and others in this journey called life is so important. Because when you're going through something like that, just to have someone smile at you at work can make such a world of
Yeah.
difference. It doesn't fix everything, but right, but it can make such a world of difference. And then to hear that you are in a healthier relationship now, where you find that you value yourself and that other person is valuing you and you value them,
Mhm.
and and there is this sense
Mhm.
of worthiness all around. To hear that that's a possibility, I think, is a
Yep.
really important piece for people to be able to hear as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. I just wish that for my daughters as they go through relationships with people, as I'm hoping that most of their life they were with myself and my current husband, my only husband at this point. Hopefully we were role models to say, hey, when difficulties come up, you talk it out, you work it out, you don't call each other names. It's not going to solve anything. You don't um, you're not mean to each other, and communication is such the key. It's the key in my job, it's the key at home, is that communication, and make sure that you're being heard and that you're hearing the other person. That's I can't emphasize it enough, that communication is it makes or break a relationship, really.
It's very true. I agree. So true. And one of the things that we like to do in here, Bonnie, and Bonnie's not on Facebook, so she hasn't seen our other interviews. We have several interviews in here. And there's two things I want to ask you. So one is faith is a pretty common thread, and you mentioned that your faith helped you throughout this. So I wanted to ask you about that. And then I want to circle to, before we close, I always like to ask, what is inspiring to you? Like, is there a certain person in your life, whether it's a celebrity or someone that you're close with, that really inspires you? Because in here, we really want to allow ourselves to feel inspired and lit up, but allow, others to
Mhm.
feel inspired and lit up as well. So before I do that, let's circle back. And can you tell us a bit about the role that faith played in your life? Because I think some people, especially if they have a strong connection to religion specifically, might question, well, I have to stay in the marriage. It's bad or wrong to leave the marriage. And so, how faith supported you throughout this process rather than made it more challenging.
I remember crying one night, and just praying, saying, give me a sign, tell me what I should do, because at this point I thought I had tried everything, and before I was giving up, I'm like, I just need to know, what is your plan? Do you want me to stay in this and try to figure out a way, or that's it? I've tried and it's not safe. Um and at some point in the next week, it just kind of came to me. I had this feeling over me, like, you know what, it's time to let go, and it's time to move on. And I had to be okay with that. And like I said, I depended on prayer a lot, just because I felt like I needed that strength that I did not currently have. And I just felt like, all right, he let me know in some way. I can't even tell you, it wasn't like a voice that I heard or anything like that. It was just a feeling like, all right, you need to let go and you need to move on. And it's just better that way. And like I said, I believe in marriage, but I don't believe that everyone has to stay in a marriage that is that toxic or unsafe. It's just, it's not worth it. It really isn't. And like I said, I come from a long line of marriages that have lasted a long time. But my mother really understood. She got it when nobody wants to see their kids that unhappy, and try as you may, some things just don't work out, and you have to be okay with that and move on and say, I'm not a bad person. I'm a good person, and I need to make sure my kids are safe and that they're healthy and that they're happy, and I'll do whatever I have to make sure that happens.
So, taking that time to pray, what I hear is like just trusting that still small voice that you
Yeah.
can only hear and feel. Like you said, there's no specific, it was like a feeling. You can only know and feel
Mhm.
inside of you when you take that time,
Mhm.
right? Like when you take that time to turn inward. And for those that are doing the reset program right now, I'm offering my reset program free currently in the group. And so for those that are in it right now, this is really neat that you said this, Bonnie, because what we focused on today in the lesson this morning is feeling.
Mhm.
Noticing how you're feeling, noticing how you want to feel. And so many times it's easy in life to just ignore your feelings and think you have to push through,
Mhm.
or I
Yeah.
should do this, or I have to do this, or I have to get through this, or that mentality of like martyr yourself, sacrifice yourself to get to the other side or get to the end of it or get to the light at the end of the tunnel. But then you get there and you just keep martyring yourself and sacrificing yourself, and you're not listening to your feelings, not slowing down enough to listen to that still small voice, whether it's for you, it's for God or source or the universe or divine or your soul or the Holy Spirit or whatever language you use for that, just that still small voice that is that creator energy that we all have inside of us, because we've all been created from something somewhere.
Mhm.
So you can feel it, right? So you can feel it. And that's that faith, I think.
Mhm. For sure.
Anything you would add or anything you really want anyone to hear before I ask you about who inspires you?
No, I mean, it's a long, hard journey. And it's funny because my ex-husband gave me a book. He had seen it somewhere when I was pregnant. You're supposed to write down all your feelings when you're pregnant. I ended up using that book as a journal to write down how I was feeling and all the awful things that I was experiencing. I didn't realize at the time, but it was my journal, and no one else. I have it somewhere in my house. I don't know where, but for me, that was a release to write down. And I never really was a big diary or journaling person, but for me to write down how I was feeling and then to go back later on after I moved out of the house and I found it in a box and I read it and I just sat there crying like, oh my gosh, I could still be in the same situation had I not made a change and made a decision. So I was really glad that I found that, even though it hurt to read some of that stuff. And I filled that book. So that's a release as well as is the journaling.
Yes, absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned that. That is something people often write out. It's like, I don't journal, I don't do the diary stuff, but like, that's not even what it's about. It's about
Right.
letting yourself slow down and feel.
Exactly.
Right?
Yep.
Beautiful. Oh, thank you so much. We're so honored. We are so blessed. We're so grateful to have you share your story, share this space with us, and do it in such an honest and open way. I just know, I can feel in my heart that this is just going to be so meaningful for so many people, who we may or may not ever know that this is meaningful for. So
Mhm.
thank you for that. So before we close, can you tell us who is inspiring to you? Maybe it's someone close to you, maybe it's someone further away, but who is inspiring to you and why?
Well, there's a person that used to be a teacher at my school. Now she's an administrator in the same district. And I know when I was going through the tough times with my older daughter, she was suicidal for a few years and in and out of hospitals. And I just remember coming to work and it's like, you have to pack all that down. I'm an administrator. People are looking to me for answers. And she came into my office the one morning and just started talking to me. And she saw that I was on the brink of being upset. And so I let her know what was going on. And she just wrapped her arms around me and prayed with me. And then I just felt like this peace. And she just happened to come in my office. Was that a coincidence? I don't think so. So then after that, she would just come in and check on me every day and just wrap her arms around. She's a very religious, wonderful woman, younger, much younger than me. And she just inspires me because she's always so kind and nice and has God at the forefront of everything she does. And wow, I don't think I would have been able to get through that the initial year that everything was going on with my daughter without her. Um, it's something that I couldn't really share with my principal, even though he was very understanding when things were going on. Oh, take whatever time you need. But she was the one who would just pray with me, and I needed that. So can I say her name? I don't know if I can or not, but
That's
she's
up to you if you
wonderful.
think she would be okay with that. But what I hear you saying is that faith piece again.
Yeah.
Right? Is like this person that I'm inspired by allowed her faith to guide her. And because I was trusting in my faith, like there was that connection there. Because for some people, faith is related to religion, and for others, it's not. And there's no right or wrong. It is what, you know what I mean? In my humble opinion. And so, oh, like that I could feel that connection as you were talking about it,
Yeah.
just how
And it
meaningful
wasn't,
that was.
she didn't know me during my marriage. This was when my daughter was a
Yeah.
teenager, so it's many years later. But music for me is a big thing. I know when I'm having a bad day, and there were times when I was teaching special education and it was, it was a tough day. I would come home and I didn't want to cry in front of my kids. So I would listen to, inspiring music on my way home. So that way, when I picked up the kids from daycare, I could take a deep breath and I was good for the rest of the night. So music is a big thing for me. I listened to Caleb a lot. I didn't know Caleb back then, but just having that music that's going to inspire you and or calm you down when you need it or pump you up when you need it. So that's a huge thing in my life now. Still to this day, I love all different kinds of genres of music and I love to sing. So that is a big stress reliever, is to sing at the top of your lungs on the way home by yourself in the car, just to get rid of whatever stress you have of the day and make it all okay.
Oh, so beautiful. So beautiful. Thank you. And I'm there with you, right? Because so Bonnie and I used to sing together in the church praise team. And I was always the one that was even though I
Yeah.
ran and Bonnie would do it with me, but not everyone did, right? So you gotta feel let the music move through you, you gotta feel it, right?
Yep. There's so many times that I listen to music that I just start bawling, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm not really not like a bawling kind of person, but
Yes.
certain music and certain lyrics move me. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a huge. You need to have your releases. You need to have your things that you can go to when you're stressed to get yourself, realigned, so to speak.
Hmm. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So
Thanks
anyone
for the opportunity.
Yes, and anyone that comes on that feels really connected to Bonnie and her story, feel free to do hashtag replay below, hashtag inspire. Let her know that you're inspired by her. I'll pass the message on to her since she's not here
Thank
on
you.
Facebook. Any questions, comments, or anything at all that comes up for you? I know this was a really powerful interview, so please feel free to leave those comments below. And if anything is specific to Bonnie, I will be sure to get that to her. And so with that, I'm going to close the live. So I'll do that right now.